I kind of wanted to make it a clickbaity title, 5 things that you need for your Fuji X-T200, but realistically, like most things in life, these really just enhance the experience of an already very capable camera. Right now, everything's on sale, including the Fuji X-T200 with the 1545 lens for $500. I'm a little salty, it hasn't even been a year. But that's good news for you because you can actually get all 5 things on this list and still have some money left over. Now, I personally use all 5 of these, and I will tell you why I chose these specifically. Some of them, they have higher priced and more quality items, but honestly, if it works and there's no real difference, just go with my suggestion. I always forget about the thumbnail, so let's just do this right now. And there's your thumbnail. Okay, getting right into it. Number 1, small camera. Really helpful to have a small tripod. Now, there are a lot of options when it comes to travel tripods. I personally have a few of them, including the Joby tripods. But Small Rig is one of my favorite companies because I use all their cages and their rails and everything on my Fuji X-T3s, and I actually just got back from filming social content for SBD for World's Strongest Man. Christmas Day in the UK, it'll be a little before that in the US. Fun stuff to watch. So what separates this from the Joby tripods, aside from price, this is about $40 or $50. You can buy 2 of these for the price of 1 Joby tripod. Is that this is what I like about them. You can tighten and loosen the legs as you see fit. And over time, one of the biggest failure points on all these small tripods is that the legs get really loose and you typically don't really have a means to tighten it. Sometimes you can kind of twist the leg and get it to stay on for a little longer, but ultimately it's a death sentence for the tripod once it starts loosening up. Now this one here comes in with an Arca Swiss plate, which is pretty handy because, especially on a camera like this, it's a very small camera. You tend to not really want to put a plate here unless you use something I have further down the list, because it'll start bumping into the lens. If you can see right here, you don't really have a lot of clearance between the lens and the base of the camera. And if you're not using an XC lens specifically, or maybe the 2.0 primes, then potentially that could lead into a problem for you. But yeah, very easy, very small tripod. The other thing that I really like about this is that I can just toss it in my backpack versus having to have to strap it on the outside. The Jobys are always just a little too big, especially if I'm carrying something with me in my backpack like a long lens or a laptop. Now, item number 2 is this L bracket, and this one specifically. You don't have to get an orange one. Orange is just my favorite color. But for every camera I own, including the point and shoot I'm shooting on right now, I actually have a camera cage. Nobody actually makes a camera cage for this one. What the hell was that? Nobody actually makes a camera cage for this one, so the L bracket is the next best bet. Now, this being orange isn't the only reason why I like it. I like the fact that you can mount it onto any tripod head that accepts Arca Swiss plates, much like this tripod here. So if you're traveling, all you have to do, knock that bad boy in, and you're done. And more importantly, if you want to shoot vertical content for your stories on IG, or just kind of fill in the frame for any vertical shots, that's it, you're done. Set it down and you're good to go. Super secure. Matter of fact, let me mount this on right now. Small Rig multi-tool. It's my everyday carry. I literally have this thing with me everywhere. So this is what it looks like mounted onto the camera itself. And this is what it looks like when you find something you want to take a photo of. And you just mount and go. Another good thing about this L bracket specifically is that although it blocks the battery door, you still have access to the side ports. So if you're on the go and you don't feel like dismounting the camera, you can go ahead and just plug in a USB-C cable right on the side and it'll charge your battery while it's inside. Next thing on our list is this camera riser. And I like this one specifically because it has thumb screws. The less tools I need to carry with me, even though I always have the multi-tool with me, the better. And you might be wondering what the point of a riser is. And you can probably hold off on it until you buy another lens, because I think other than this lens, and again, maybe the f2.0 primes, you're going to have this problem. This is the 16mm f1.4, super popular lens. But let me show you something. Now, look closely. You can see that the bottom of this lens actually extends below the camera body, and if this riser weren't here, say you were trying to mount it onto a plate, it would actually end up hitting the lens and you wouldn't be able to do it without potentially damaging something. Matter of fact, let me show you what I did once, thinking I was slick. I actually ended up cranking the plate onto the tripod hole so tight that I cracked the base because it was at a bad angle. So don't be like me. This thing is very inexpensive and it's toolless, and you can still mount it to things. It has a 1/4-inch screw on the bottom. Yeah. Also, if you plan on using a gimbal, same thing. Well, it's right next to me, may as well do it here. So this is a DJI Ronin SC. It's a perfect gimbal for a camera of this size. Here's the plate. You would think it's a Manfrotto plate. It's proprietary, and I really don't like DJI for making it this way. But this, I actually think this is the exact setup where I ended up cracking the tripod base. But you see, it's not even on fully tight all the way, and it's already bent because it's touching the lens. Now, when you have a camera riser there, you can mount pretty much any lens and you don't have that problem. And there you go. Plenty of clearance. You can rock your X-T200 on the Ronin SC or whichever other gimbal that you might find on sale. This one, honestly, for this camera, not a huge fan of how it turns compared to the other Ronins, but pretty good, especially for a camera of this size. And now you're good. You've got tons of clearance. As you can see there, I've mounted this one. I've mounted the 16-55 on. And those are the two chunkiest lenses and probably the two most common ones you'll end up using on a gimbal. So that camera riser, very inexpensive, very handy. I have two of them. I keep one in my backpack because sometimes I do forget it. Might be a good idea for you too. Number 4 on the list, super handy, especially if you use this as a webcam. The latest firmware update for this, the only firmware update so far, actually turns this into the best webcam in the Fuji ecosystem. I have absolutely no idea why it turned out this way. Now I own two X-T3s, and the X-T3s, the X-T4s, if you want to use them as webcams, you still have to install Fuji software so that it recognizes the camera as a webcam. Now that's all fine and dandy, but it is an extra step, and if you're like me and your workplace has a VPN, it means you can't actually install it and use this, and you have to look like a plebe like everyone else on your Zoom calls. That's on the X-T3 and the other Pro bodies, but on this one, plug it in via USB-C to any USB-A port and you're good to go. Why that's the case with this and not the others, I have no idea, but I'm not going to question it. It's also a lot lighter, so it's easier to position behind your laptop. Now this was probably done because of space reasons. This is a very small camera, but this USB-C port on the X-T3s, it's power delivery and you can charge passively while you're using the camera. Here, that isn't the case. So what you need is something like this. This is a dummy battery. The reason why I like this over the others is that because it has a USB-A port, and what that means is that you're not limited to just plugging it into an outlet. Although it does come with one of these if you're next to an outlet and you want to just plug it in. Let me show you how to use it. You just pop out your battery. You pop this guy in. Oop, wrong way. And you see this little nub. I'm actually gonna stand up and try to get really close. This little nub here, you push it up, and now you've got this gap. And what you do is you put the wire through that gap. You sit back down. So you put the wire through that gap and you close it, and that's it, you're good to go. And now I can plug this into a wall. Press to verify. Obviously no power. Or what I really like about this, if you got a power bank, you're on the go, or a free USB port on your laptop, press the on button, and you're good to go. This will give you hours of power, so it's great for webcams. It's also great if you plan on doing some long exposure shots or you wanted to do a time lapse. All you have to do is connect it to an external power source, and you can set the intervals at whatever it is that you want to set them at and leave. Just remember that this does have time-lapse mode in it, so you can pretty much set it up for as long as you want at that point. And again, it's very handy. It doesn't really take up any extra space. And let me turn it off first. And it's very easy to install. When you're done, just pop your battery back in. Of course, I put it in the wrong way. Push the little nub back in. There you go. And that's it, you're done. Nice and easy. Funny thing is about this is that they cost less than even the knockoff batteries. Not sure why. And also, if you want it to be a psychopath for some reason and you're like me and you travel with V-mount batteries when you're doing your professional work, you can actually just connect this to a V-mount adapter and run it off your V-mount battery, because typically if I'm in a hotel room on a multi-day shoot, I don't like breaking down my rig. I think it's not a good idea. So if I'm filming anything personal, I'll have this, or I'll have the camera I'm using right now. And yeah, you know. Okay, our last product, actually something very hard to find for most cameras. This is a wireless Bluetooth shutter, and this works on the X-T200. Now, it's a very specific cable, pretty easy to find. Typically, it's a shutter release cable. Specifically, you can't use an audio cable on this. This is called the Pebble. It's designed to be used with Fujifilm and Nikon cameras, but for Fujifilm cameras, it only works for everything that came X-T3 and beyond. The other ones used a USB mini type shutter release. Now, the thing is, a lot of people, when the Fuji X-A7 came out, which is essentially this camera without a viewfinder, a lot of people complained about the mic port here. Basically what it is, it was a 2.5mm jack, because on these smaller cameras, you use the same port for either shutter release or for a microphone. Chances are the average person is going to use it to plug in a microphone over a remote shutter release, be it wired or unwired. So this one came with a 3.5mm jack. Now, I definitely prefer having the 3.5mm jack, but what that means is that you have to remember to always have one of these. This is a 2.5 female to 3.5 male adapter, and this way you can plug it into the side, otherwise it won't fit. So anytime you have anything plugged in, you get this notification saying that check your settings. Is this a microphone or is it a shutter release? You just go into your settings and you select what it is, and then it stays that way unless you change it. So if I'm doing a couple of days and it's all a bunch of long exposures, or I'm using the remote shutter, I don't have to go in every time you do it, but the message does pop up. You can just ignore it. Okay, and let's just see if I'm exposed enough to show this to you. Kind of reflecty, but yeah. So I'm going to pick remote, and now I'm set up to use this. So you can still use it as a regular shutter release, and it works very well, as all shutter releases should. But what's really nice about this one is that it's one of the few wireless shutter releases that not only work really well, it's got a 90-foot range. I have absolutely no idea why you would be 90 feet away from a camera before pressing the button, but, well, I guess maybe if you're trying to take a photo of a bear. But other than trying to take a photo of a bear up close, all you have to do is turn the power button on so that the receiver's on, and then that's it. Now, this is great for people who take a bunch of photos of themselves, which obviously, as you can see by my hand positioning, I am not one of them. It's also really good for group photos, especially family photos, because nobody listens ever. I'm getting a little bit of PTSD right now, but yeah, really good for family photos. Now, there are a couple of wireless ones on the market, but the reason why I like this one, and I don't know if this is why it's called the Pebble, but the transmitter is actually very small. It's about the size of the Bluetooth shutter releases they have for your phone. I don't know why. The other ones are all the size of, like, they're bigger than this. They're the size of like TV remote controls, and especially if you're a content creator who's trying to take photos of themselves, that's kind of a problem, because you can't like just take that photo. Here, I can hide it. I've got pretty small hands, but I can still hide this by closing my fist. If you're a content creator, it's gonna be sticking out. It doesn't look good. It's hard to clone stamp out. And this is one of the few offerings on the market, I don't really know of any others, where it's just a simple button. It's not a phone app. I hate phone apps when they're attached to any type of equipment. The Pluto trigger, really good trigger, really not ideal for that type of work unless you use a 10-second timer. And speaking of timers, this does have a 2-second delay. That you can actually use without setting the timer inside the camera. So it's really handy. It's under $50. This one's actually under $40, but you are going to need this adapter. I'll put a link to one, but honestly, if you live next to a Micro Center or any kind of electronics store, you can probably pick up the adapter for $1 or $2 versus probably the $6 that's gonna be on Amazon. That's pretty much it for this video. I'm actually in the middle of doing the long-term review on this camera. I do really like it. I do have some things I would like to see changed via firmware if it's possible. And now that it's $500, I'm expecting a lot of people to pick this up. I've already seen it back ordered online. So at the $500 price point, man, you are getting a lot of camera for the money, especially since it comes with a lens as well. I think I paid, I don't know if it was $700 or $800 at the beginning of the Corona apocalypse for this. So I'm a little salty, but it's okay, because at least now more people will be putting out better content and learning how to use cameras, and the camera industry will probably feel a little less threatened from smartphones, which are great, but it's not as fun as this stuff is. That's the end of this video. Keep an eye out for the long-term review on the Fuji X-T200. Feel free to drop any questions below on any of these products, any products you are looking for that I did not touch on, or for the camera itself. I'm going through the comments of the old videos and I'm trying to get all the questions together on a list so I can hit all of them in the upcoming video, and then also make a little firmware wish list for Fuji in case one of their people get bored and decide to watch it. They do have very limited resources, and this isn't a flagship camera, but it would be really cool to see a few very minor changes implemented, although that is a lot of work on the back end. But hey, maybe if enough of us ask nicely, they'll do it. That is the end of this video. That is a point-and-shoot camera, so I don't really have a lens cap to sign off with, and I'm not really good at the whole sign-off process anyway, so I'm just gonna borrow the one from this camera.